Hello, this is Kalia in 2020. What you are about to hear is the remastered version of the episode that you clicked on. Why? Well, it turns out that when I started this podcast, I got some incorrect information regarding copyright law and fair use policy. After nearly 2 years of making content, this oversight was brought to my attention. There was mild panic, lots of guilt, and then a few fervent nights doing research. It seems we might exist in this gray, nebulous area of fair use for critique and commentary, and thus our use of a teeny tiny bit of the music from the soundtracks of the movies that we are critiquing and commenting on might be allowable. But then again, it might not. So a few things. 1, I don't want to be a jerk, even accidentally. 2, I think it's important to acknowledge when you mess up. But 3, and this is key, I think acknowledging your mess up isn't enough. You have to rectify the situation if possible. And guess what? It's totally possible to go back into these old episodes and clip out the maybe illegal, maybe just slightly crappy bit of audio and replace it with a bit of music created just for me by the same composer and performer who made us our theme music. Which is what I'm going to do. And since I can't help but tinker just a smidge, I might clean up a teeny tiny bit of audio noise while I'm in there. I mean, I've learned a lot over the last 2 years, and who knows, you might be stumbling upon this podcast feed years from now. So why should your present-day ears be punished because way back in time, I hadn't yet found the noise reduction button? Anyway, without further ado, here is the podcast you came here for. Just slightly better. Thanks for listening.
It's the Pages and Popcorns podcast. Jennifer and Kalia will edify. It's the Pages and Popcorns podcast. Jennifer and Kalia are gonna talk, so you'd better damn well listen.
Hello and welcome to Pages and Popcorn Podcast, the podcast where two book nerds talk about movies that were based on books as well as the original source material.
We will answer questions like, how are these two interpretations the same? How are they different? And are they even worth your time? But before we discuss today's book and movie combo, we have a few announcements. First off, we want to remind you to follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Pages and Popcorn Podcast.
And if you've been on our social media platforms recently, you might have noticed that we now have a Patreon account. So thank you so much to the lovely people who have signed up already to support us and our podcast. We love you all, obviously, all of you. And you can find out more about our Patreon and the perks of supporting us on our website, which is pagesandpopcornpodcast.com. Also on our website, you will find episode notes and all the ways that you can listen to the podcast with direct links to things like Spotify and iTunes, etc.
We also want to let you know that you are welcome to email us at pagesandpopcornpodcast@gmail.com. You can send your thoughts, your disagreements, your own answer to was that worth your time question. We will be doing a special mailbag episode later in the year, and we might want to feature your email. Again, that email address is pagesandpopcornpodcast@gmail.com.
And now, on with the show. Today we will be discussing The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams.
Do you want to start by how you came to it?
Sure. I came to this book because in high school everybody quoted it all the time, and people wore backpacks and had labels and stickers and jean jackets with things embroidered on it, and it was just this thing that everybody talked about all the time. It and Monty Python got quoted, and also Full Metal Jacket, but that's more a reflection on the people I hung out with, all the freaking time. And then, when I was in college, my boyfriend at the time was like, you have to read this book, and if you don't read this book, then you will not understand pop culture. And I said, you know what, I'm going to grant your premise, because everybody's talking and quoting this book all the time. So, I read the trilogy, and then I had done that. Years later, the movie came out, and we went and saw the movie, and I saw it. And then years later, you said we should read this and do this. And I said, okay. And I reread the first book, and then I watched the movie.
You went to a much cooler high school than I did. Nobody read this book except for me.
Very indifference of opinions of cool. Oh.
There was one guy who was all about Tim Curry, and that was like...
There was a lot of Monty Python,
There was a lot of Rocky Horror at my...
There was a fair amount of Rocky Horror, but there was a lot of Monty Python and Are You Being Served and a lot of British stuff at my high school that was not...
We didn't have as much access. Maybe it's, you're not that much younger than I am, but...
What year did you graduate high school?
94.
I graduated in 98.
Okay.
Not
yeah,
that
internet
much
was a little
difference.
bit, I guess, better.
Nobody was on the internet really in high school. Like, we didn't have Google until I was in college. But it was
Well, we couldn't get BBC, especially at where I lived. There was no satellite. There was, nothing.
I don't know how people got exposed. I lived in a house that did not have a television, so I got exposed through other people, and I have no idea how people were getting exposed or why or whatnot. But I mean, I had Monty Python at my house because my dad had them on records.
We were at
Also,
a
Rocky Horror Picture
drive-in
Show.
theater, and we were just kind of waiting for the movie to start, and we put it on NPR, and they were playing Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So we were first exposed to, like, the radio show back when I don't even remember, I was like 5 or 6.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, my brother fell in love with it. This is one of his Christmas gifts to me. I'm holding up the leather-bound, gold-covered edition of the more than complete Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. We had audio tapes of it.
Okay.
So,
mine is also a black hardbound
mine's prettier.
book. I'm sure it had a nice cover. It has some heft to it.
Yeah, but mine's thicker.
Sometimes
Mine's bigger than yours, Kaylee.
yours is bigger than mine. Sometimes it's not the size, Jennifer.
Sometimes it is. Sometimes there's more stuff. So, yeah.
So
I was,
anyways,
like,
you've
the
loved
only
it
geek
forever.
I remember doing a report on it in 8th grade. And yeah, it's one of those that I was a huge fan. And then apparently we're going to have a little bit of a disagreement on some of this.
Apparently.
All right. So the book, the universe was created and this is largely thought to be a bad idea. I don't think you like British humor.
Oh, yeah, maybe we should start off with that. So I'm not super into British humor.
I've noticed.
I'm sorry. She said that line and then looked at me like I was about to giggle, and I'm just sitting here waiting for her to finish. So, I don't know. Like, I don't really like British humor. Okay, save your hate or send your hate. I don't know. Whatever. It's fine. Monty Python's not my bag, baby. Austin Powers, not my bag, baby. British humor, not really my thing. So I know that colored this.
Okay. So the book begins with a hungover Arthur thinking yellow a number of times. It turns out that one of the yellows of that morning is a bulldozer about to knock his house down. A city councilman, a descendant of Genghis Khan, arrives at Dent's house to demolition it in order to build a bypass. Arthur's best friend, Ford Prefect, named after a British car, arrives, warning him of the end of the world. Ford convinces a workman to lie in front of the bulldozers, and the two pop off to the pub. Ford is revealed to be an alien who has come to the Earth to research for the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, an electric book to help a whoopee frood get around. An alien race, known as the Vogons, who are unpleasant, bad-tempered, bureaucratic, officious, and callous, show up to demolish the Earth in order to build a bypass for an intergalactic highway. Arthur and Ford manage to get onto the Vogon ship, no actual thumbs used, because aliens working as caterers hate the Vogons. The spaceship is kind of disappointing. Arthur has a mild crisis. Intro to the Babelfish. Babelfish can instantly translate all known languages into the ear hole of the listener. And is one of the proofs that God doesn't exist, in a really interesting way. The Vogons find and torture them with the worst poetry in the universe. Arthur and Ford are ordered to say how much they like the poetry in order to avoid being thrown out of the airlock, and while Ford finds listening to be painful, depending on which adaptation you're listening to, Arthur believes it to be genuinely good, since human poetry is apparently even worse or just as terrible, or he's just as in pain as Ford. Arthur and Ford are then placed into the airlock and jettisoned into space. They will live for 30 seconds with a full lung of air. 29 seconds later, they are saved by the improbability drive aboard the Heart of Gold, Zaphod Beeblebrox's stolen ship. The Vogons destroy the Earth. It is a big, terrible silence, and then there's a big, terrible noise, and then there is a big, terrible silence. Zaphod, a semi-cousin of Ford, is the president of the galaxy and is accompanied by a depressed robot named Marvin and a human woman named Trillian. Ford and Zaphod are trying to outcool each other, but are outdone by Arthur's "We've Met." So Arthur and Zaphod have some history. The story of Trillian is introduced, and Arthur cannot get a good cup of tea. The five embark on a journey to find the legendary planet known as Magrathea, a company that made luxury planets until it collapsed the economy of the universe. They are almost killed by the planet's defenses until Arthur intervenes and the improbability drive saves them. A Petunia and Whale exist, and then they don't. On the surface, they split up. Arthur and Marvin are left behind by the others. Arthur meets Slarty Batfast, who works for Magrathea, and shows him about. Marvin is left behind until much later. Trillian, Ford, Zaphod, and the White Mice explore the planet. Slarty Bartfast tells Arthur about Deep Thought, the ultimate answer, which is 42. The Earth is a computer, and also there are mice. and the mice are basically controlling everything because they are hyper-intelligent, pan-dimensional super beings. They reject the idea of building a second Earth to redo the process and offer to buy Arthur's brain in hope that it contains the question to the ultimate answer of life, the universe, and everything. Zaphod saves Arthur when his brain is about to be removed. They are attacked by compassionate, trigger-happy police. Marvin saves them when he plugs himself into the police computer, and the computer commits suicide, taking the police with it. The group decides to go to the restaurant at the end of the universe. And the radio version, they escape through the improbability to the restaurant at the end of the universe, but they end up there at the end of this. Okay, so in the movie, the dolphins, they're the ones who introduce the whole story with So Long and Thanks for All the Fish. There's kind of a Bugsy, Berkeley, Broadway-style dolphin sort of sing-along number. Kind of catchy if you like that sort of thing.
I do!
I didn't. Arthur wakes up and runs out to lie in front of the bulldozer. There's no great dialogue that was in the book. Ford runs up with a grocery cart full of beer and grabs Arthur to go to the pub. At the pub, intro of Trillian and Arthur at a party. There's this little flashback. Trillian's kind of into him, and she's adventurous. All goes well until some other guy with a cool line whisks her away. Arthur's house is being demolished. Aliens come demolish the Earth. There is the power of hitchhiking. Actual thumbs were used. The Earth is destroyed with no sound or fanfare. Arthur and Ford wake up in a derelict ship. Ford tells Arthur, "Your home is kind of blown up." An awkward hug ensues. "You got to know where your towel is." And this is always a major theme in every single Hitchhiker adaptation. You gotta know your towel. Intro of the Babelfish. Poetry torture ensues. Arthur is not overly troubled by the poetry, while it looks like Mos Def is having a seizure. Arthur tries to say how good the poetry is to save their lives, but they are jettisoned out of the airlock. Ford and Arthur are sofas until the probability realigns himself, and they find themselves on the Heart of Gold. Zaphod intro. Trillian re-intro. Zaphod's extra head is below the original. The third arm is barely there. There's like a scene where he's making a drink, and that's the only time you see it. Huma Kavula is new, and he's presented in the background of the television screen. This is a weird, legless John Malkovich, who is a very minor character in the book. Marvin the paranoid android is introduced. The Vogons go after Zaphod for stealing the Heart of Gold. Arthur notices the door is sighing. Marvin says hi and explains the existential uselessness of his life. Zaphod and Ford hug with less awkwardness and more dorkishness. Arthur says, "We've met." Vogons attack. Eddie the shipboard computer tries to help in his genuine cybernetics personality positive way. Intro of how the Heart of Gold is so awesome. Trillian takes Arthur on this little, "Oh my god, this is so amazing, and isn't it fantastic?" There are 2 white mice. Arthur and Trillian have a romantic moment. Zaphod explains what he had to do to his brain, which is, why he's got kind of the 2 heads or some sort of bizarreness with the subplot. The story of deep thought and the answer to life, the universe, and everything. The answer is 42. So the timing of this is very different. Journey to Magrathea via the improbability drive. The improbability drive turns them all into yarn. There are 2 more white mice. This is when we finally get the line of the universe was created. But they weren't taken to Magrathea. Instead, this is another plot diversion, they are on a new planet, there's a party going on, and there's this religion where the universe was sneezed out by God. Bodiless, eyeless John Malkovich is Huma Kavula, and this is a very, very creepy scene. He wants them to steal a point-of-view gun and takes one of Zaphod's heads as hostage. So Zaphod is back to having only the 1 head. Vogons attack and save Zaphod from the kidnappers, which, they're saving him, I guess, from himself since he kind of kidnapped himself. Ford saves him with his towel. He goes over and, blinds Zaphod, and the creatures are so stupid they don't realize that if you can't see them, then they can't see you, apparently. So Trillian attempts to save them with an aerosol can, but she is taken hostage. Arthur yells, "Trillian!" and shows his love and adoration. The romantic plot continues. There are 2 white mice. Escape pod to the rescue. So they're after Trillian now that they're back on the Heart of Gold. When they're on the planet Vogosphere, they're hit in the head by these sort of semi-intelligent, sort of weird creatures. It looks like it's...
Fly swatters.
Yeah, they look like fly swatters. And they looked mechanical, but apparently they're a creature that just smacks you in the head when you have an idea. There is a nice little thing with the book where they have jewel crabs. Trillian is held hostage by bureaucracy. They find out Zaphod signed the order to destroy the Earth. Arthur comes to the rescue. He says, "I'm British. I know how to queue." He gets in line, and bureaucracy ensues. Arthur saves Trillian with the power of expert form filing. Vogons will run and attack Zaphod, and company, but they have to have a lunch break, and being the officious people they are, they can't attack until their lunch break is done. Arthur and Trillian love story continues. Trillian is disillusioned with Zaphod. They get to Magrathea, the planet attacks, Arthur saves the day by pressing the Impala ability drive, and they're turned into yarn. They get to the planet, there's a dimensional portal. Trillian is kind of upset with the world, and so she jumps right in. Ford is up for anything, so he jumps in. Zaphod's like, hey, don't leave me behind, I like a party, so he jumps in, and Arthur is too cowardly, so the portal closes before he actually goes. So he's stuck on the planet with Marvin. We have a lot of scene jumping between Trillian, Ford, and Zaphod, who find Deep Thought, and then we go back to Arthur, who meets Slotty Bartfast for the first time. They go on a tour. At first it looks like a little rickety workbox, but then it's actually really cool. They go through the dimension that Magrathea is sort of encapsulating. So they see the actual building of planets. Very neat scene. Ford, Zillion, and Zaphod are at Deep Thought. Deep Thought is watching their cartoon. The three are attacked. Scene changes to Arthur and Sardi Botfast. Sardi Botfast shows Arthur the wonders of the planet creation and New Earth. Then we go back to the trio. They find the point of view gun. Trillian comes to terms with Zaphod's stupidity and uses the gun on him to show him just how devastated she is by the Earth blowing up. Back to a scene change. Stop at a different Arthur's house, and while the others are there and eating, they were taken hostage by the mice, and now they're back at the little shack eating food. The food is drugged. Arthur is put into this little chair-like device, and the mice are basically going to take his brain, but Arthur breaks free, and he declares his love of Trillian, crushes the two mice with a tea kettle, and when he brings it up, they're actually the two little beings, which is kind of weird because they're intergalactic, pan-dimensional, but we'll get into that. The Vogons attack, Marvin shows up, is shot, and saves the day with the point of view gun. Because he's so depressed, he makes them all depressed and they just fall over. Then they decide to go to the restaurant at the end of the universe, and there's a gag that they're going in the wrong direction. Restaurant of the universe is not geographical, it is chronological.
No. You only know that because you read the next book.
Well, no, that's the whole point. That is the whole point of the restaurant at the end of the universe. There's no end to the universe. That's why it's chronological and not geographic. And this is a huge thing. This is an absolutely huge thing.
Okay, I actually kind of liked that gag.
Okay. I'm going to explain why that is so bad.
No, it's not bad.
It's terrible.
Okay. I feel like we have to start our discussion with a couple of premises.
Okay.
One, just because somebody likes something doesn't make it good, and just because somebody doesn't like something doesn't make it bad.
I'm going to start off with a slightly different premise, because people do freak out about this book a lot.
Yes.
One, it is fine to change things. Douglas Adams changed things constantly because he was writing on the fly, and so the radio show has a bunch of stuff that didn't make it into the book. The book does a bunch of stuff. He added to it. And even Douglas Adams didn't like the last two books that he wrote, which was mostly Harmless and So Long and Thanks for All the Fish.
But he did work on the screenplay of this movie.
He wrote a draft that is not the same as a finished product.
No, but it's a starting point.
It's a starting point.
Okay.
But I'm just going to say, Douglas Adams, for him, the radio show was the one version that he liked the least during his lifetime. And that's partly he didn't have a whole lot of control over it, or the one that he had the least amount of control. He was very controlling about his work.
Okay.
So changes are okay. This is not one of those books that you want to stick strictly to canon, because there really is no, strict canon.
Sure.
So, changes are fine, but not all changes are good.
No, I think it's important to think about the reasons for changes. So I feel like the book was written for the audience. At the time, there was no preconceived audience because the book and the radio show were coming out at the same time. We're talking 1979.
So, the BBC radio show came out in 1978. The book version came out in 1979, and there's kind of some interesting trivia about that.
Right, but he was writing them both at the same time, point. My point is that by the time this 2005 movie came out, there was an audience of people who loved the book, which is very different than the book/radio, where you didn't have this built-in audience that was going to have these heavy
I'll
opinions.
give you that, but
that was the entirety of my point right there.
Okay.
Was this movie fan service? Or was this movie there to get a new generation of people into the book? What do you think? Because I think that will determine how you feel about the changes. Does that make sense?
You're never going to please all the fans. And that's one of the problems with adaptation. So, when Lord of the Rings came out, there were people who were like, oh, but this one character wasn't in there. So, the other thing is the fans kind of know, the ones who know that there is a game and a TV version, all this other stuff, they know that there are changes and divergence. And you do have to do something, but you also want to keep the stuff that people love the most.
Do you?
Yeah. And it depends on what you're changing.
And again, the question is fan service or new generation. Do you think this movie was made for fan service, or do you think this movie was made for the next generation?
Despite that, you don't want to change the message so much that you completely lose the message from the original source material.
Are you not answering my question?
No, I'm not, because I think it's, first off, it's an either-or question, and that's a logical fallacy. And I have a whole other thing on that I do. If you're interested, you could check that out on Facebook and Meetup. But yeah, I don't think that you have this, well, you're doing it for this or that reason.
Okay.
And if you're trying to get people into this genre, this big cultural thing, this is not the way to do it, because your message is completely obliterated. Well, the messages from the book are completely gone.
Okay, we talk about messages towards the end, so let's put a pin in messages, because I'm curious to hear your messages. What do you want to talk about? The big changes? The little changes? Any changes?
So one
the changes
of the
you liked? The changes you didn't like?
One of the changes, and this is...
Did you like any of the changes?
Well... That's an interesting question. When we get to, what's his name? The John Malkovich, sort of, this is really creepy. Now, apparently, this was somebody that Douglas Adams had written. He was going to expand the role. It's mentioned, like the religion is mentioned. They're waiting for the great white handkerchief because it's this sneezed out thing. This character was a very minor character. He wanted to make it a bigger character. It's a diversion in the plot. But it doesn't have Adams' sort of stamp on it. It's really creepy and weird. So it looks like something he intended but didn't flesh out. When you look at the shovels, it looks like something that he intended as a gag. The lemon juicer that makes Zaphod think a little bit better was something that he would have fleshed out at some point, but it isn't. And so it looks really clunky.
Okay, I really like the fly swatter things hitting you every time you have an idea.
But what's the point of it?
What's the point? Okay, no, you don't get to ask me what's the point of that. What's the point of any of the absurd things? I think one of the reasons I didn't like the book is a writing style, okay? And I don't feel like you have to have a joke in every sentence for a book to be funny. And I feel like this book was like, why have a sentence without a joke when I could insert a couple random words or throw in a little aside and make it funny? That's not to say that some of the jokes weren't funny. There were some really funny things in the book, and there was some really clever writing in the book. But I think it just got oversaturated. Everything had to be a joke. Everything was a punchline. Everything was a one-off. Everything, well, maybe it'll come back, maybe it won't. Who cares? It's just all absurd. It's absurd for the sake of being absurd. So, okay, fine. If that's what this is, if this is absurd for the sake of being absurd, if this is silly to this level of silliness, then of course we're going to have fly swatters that hit you every time you have an idea.
But if you look at the book, everything that's absurd, there is some sort of in-universe reason for it. If you have your towel, it means a thing. If you have the babelfish, it means a thing. For these fly swatters, what's kind of the backstory of it?
It's punishing you for having an idea.
Why?
Because this whole thing, they're on the Vogon planet, which is bureaucracy, which is all about following the rules without questioning. Creativity is bad in the Vogon world. That's why their poems are so bad.
But this isn't something that the Vogons created. This is just an independent life form that
that obviously evolved on the same planet as the Vogons.
But, okay, so here's one of the jokes in the book, is that the planet, I guess, felt bad, evolution felt bad for creating the Vogons, and so they made these other really wondrous creatures. So we have, like, these graceful, gorgeous gazelles that the Vogons catch and then sit on them, and it kills them. And so the Vogons keep destroying all these wonderful things. You have the jewel crabs, and they're these beautiful crabs, and then the Vogons destroy them. And so there's a joke within that of how the Vogons are just these awful things, and the universe itself, evolution itself, can't change what they are. They made a mistake, and that mistake will always haunt it. So the shovels, they're kind of aligned with the Vogons. It looks like something that the Vogons would have created.
Sure, either way. Either way, it's fine. It didn't seem out of place to have that there. But it doesn't fit with
the in-universe explanation.
Okay, but the movie didn't give us an in-universe explanation.
And that's one of the issues with the movie, is that it adds in these other plots, and then it takes away from the really good stuff that was in the book.
Okay, what was a really good stuff that in the book that explained that?
Okay, I actually liked the animations that were in the movie. This is one of the things I liked.
I did too. A little 2D...
Yeah, they were kind of cute little vignettes, and they were well done. So that's the sort of stuff. I wanted more of the Hitchhiker Guide to the Galaxy stuff. That's what made the book kind of fun and interesting, is that you get kind of a backstory. Well, why is the world this way? Why is the universe this way? Well, here's the thing.
So you wanted more guide in the movie?
I would have loved to have more guide.
You know what, we can agree on this. More guide, less romance.
Yes.
Okay, for sure. I'll give you that. No contention there. The little fly swatter things were fine. They felt totally in keeping. If you came to this movie without reading the book, I don't feel like that's not the thing you'd be like, oh no, now this movie has lost me. Do you know what I mean? I have a feeling like being people turned into couches might have been the point where you're like, oh, this movie has lost me, if you weren't ready for the whole rest of it. I will also say that the tone is very different from between the two and how they start. You know, in the book, we start kind of real, right?
Okay, so this is one of the problems I have. So in the book, you have Arthur Dent, he's sitting in front of the plow, and Ford comes up and says, I have to take you to the pub.
No, even before that, though. We start with a guy waking up, trying to remember what happened last night. Like, it's very real world. We have, like, this whole little thing about there's not, nobody's happy. It's all about
the first major divergence that really matters.
No, it's not. Let me finish. Okay, so the book starts off with this real-life guy. We have this little social commentary about people not being happy with money moving around the planet, but we have this guy. He's just a dude. He's dealing with a hangover. The movie, the first thing that happens is we have dolphins singing. Okay? From the opening 30 seconds of both things, the tone is very different.
Yes.
So the book starts you in reality and then goes absurd. And you're never really, for me as a reader, I felt like Arthur, out of place. Like, I don't know what's going to happen because it's so absurd. And I started in a real place. That's
the book doesn't start right there with Arthur. It starts a little bit before that. It starts with the
guide.
Yeah.
Yes, but I mean, the protagonist, who we're rooting for, we start with him. In the movie, before we even get Arthur, we get a heavy dose of absurdity. We don't get like social commentary, something that's like witty, but we get freaking dolphins jumping around and like flying out of the water, and it's Broadway.
I don't see how that's so much different from the guide starting off the book, because we're both starting off from this very odd perspective that the reality that we know is not the reality that we should know, I suppose.
Yeah, I feel like the book starts off almost pure like science fiction, and you could it's almost going to maybe even be hard sci-fi. It could for a little while, witty but still hard. The movie starts with flying fish, so I feel like
aren't fish, they're mammals.
But they fly out of the water, flying mammals flying out of the water and up into space, and that's fine because that actually, to me, set the tone for the movie.
I was completely bored by that. It's just like, why are we having this musical number?
I loved it. And that song is really catchy. And I will also say, again, for your audience, my 6-year-old sings that song now, days later. Like, it resonated with her, right?
I can't stand that song.
Well, okay, that's your prerogative, but that doesn't make it bad. And I think that the movie put it there to start the story in this just this fundamentally weird-ass way. And you're like, okay, now I know I'm going to watch a movie that has freaking flying mammals. It's super silly. Nothing I accept as real or my real life is here. This is the universe where dolphins are super, intelligent and they fly.
That's not the biggest divergence that really bothered me. It was a divergence that bothered me a little bit, but not like the one where I went, okay, this is going to be really fucked up in a lot of ways. It's a little too happy, and it sort of misses the tone of what's going on with the universe. The whole point of this, the big message that you find, because we do have to talk about themes here, is that the universe does not care about you. The universe just doesn't. It's not that it's evil. It's not that it's callous. It's just there's nothing there. There's no caring. And so bad things will happen. Your whole galaxy will die for nothing, for just the most absurd, stupid reasons. And that's very much like human life. There are people who die for just stupid, absurd reasons. And it's tragic because they have all this life. They have a purpose. They have family. And then, boom, they're gone. And for nothing. And this is kind of the point. It's
of the book.
Yes, it is kind of this existential horror, but, let's laugh about it. So the point of this, the thing that really got me... No, seriously, this is the thing. So Ford comes up, and in the movie, he's got like a whole waste can thing of beer, and he hands this out, and he's like, okay, everyone, you need a beer, and this is a distraction technique, because I guess he knew that there were going to be bulldozers and construction workers.
No, I think he brought the beer for them to drink.
But then why is he taking him to the pub?
Because Arthur won't talk to him while they're in front of his house. He's so distracted by the house. So Ford's first plan is to get him drunk right there with all this beer. His second plan is, fine, I will use the beer as a distraction and get Arthur away. We'll go to the pub and have a drink. I just need him to get boozed up. This is Ford's whole point right here is to booze up Arthur and get him ready.
But the dialogue that's missing here is really what kills me. Because the dialogue is what said everything. It is the absurdist of, oh, well, why don't we get you to lie in front of the bulldozer while I go off with my friend and go to the pub? And that's what kills it. That's the whole thing that kills it. It doesn't understand the message of the book. It is a fundamental misunderstanding of the source material.
I don't grant that premise. I feel like that joke was fine, but I felt like an adaptation is going to have to make choices about the jokes.
Yeah, absolutely. But this is one of those that really fundamentally sets up the logic that you see happening constantly.
Well, and I'll agree with you that was a funny line. That was a funny little logic play, and what is logical.
But why would you take that out? Why do you have Ford coming up with all this beer and saying, I'll just give you the beer,
assuming
and then
that
we'll
they
take
took it out because, time, and they wanted to move the thing along, and maybe people had come to see the rest of the thing, and they had already decided at some point when they were making this movie to add in the whole subplot about going to the other planet and yada yada. So now they're even more succinct on time, or limited, I should say.
I would have totally taken that out.
Okay.
And so if you want to ask, well, are you doing this for fan service, or are you doing this to, get a new audience? How many new people really got into this? And if they like the movie, they're not going to like the rest of the series. So how are you going to actually add fans to this?
See,
the people who love it, they were completely turned off by this film.
No, that's not true. I know a lot of people who loved
too.
the book, or liked the book, or enjoyed the book immensely, who also enjoyed the movie. And I would say, as somebody who did not like the book particularly much, I was fine with the movie.
Yeah, and that's kind of the problem, is that you don't get the book either.
No, I get the book, Jennifer. I get the book. I just didn't particularly like the book. There are elements of it that I found enjoyable enough, but it took me a long time to read because I kept putting it down and then distracting myself with cleaning closets and stuff so that I wouldn't have to finish it. It wasn't my book, which is fine. Not every book has to be my book.
But that's kind of my point here, is that it's not your book, and so you don't feel any particular love or attention, or that this is a thing that is important. If it's totally changed, it's it doesn't matter. Because it wasn't something that you cared about.
Exactly. And that's how I can enjoy the movie without bringing in any emotional baggage or ennui about the fact that they left out one of my favorite jokes. You talked about people getting upset when Lord of the Rings...
This is not ennui. This is disappointment.
You talked about Lord of the Rings and people getting all upset because their favorite character, their favorite scene was left out. Okay, that's going to happen when you have something that you love, right? And yes, we've even talked about stuff on this podcast where there was oh my God, I loved that scene.
Okay, but the thing is, Tolkien had his creation, and there weren't reiterations, there weren't variations of it. I think the fans of Hitchhiker understood that it's okay to have variations. It's that you still continue to understand the basic premises, and you still understand the basic humor that's involved, and what's going on, and what the purposes and messages are. And that was completely missing. It's there in the radio show, it's there in the book, it's there in the game.
So if you're saying that the point of the book was that life doesn't care about you...
That's one.
Okay, hold on. But let's say... And that point was missing in the movie. Is that...
Yeah, it's such a sugary, ridiculously happy ending.
I feel like... I didn't particularly like the romantic subplot in the movie, and I didn't particularly like the ending either. I don't need a sugary, happy ending like you. But I feel like they obviously meant for that to be... They meant for the point, or maybe not the point, but a message of the movie to be this happy ending. And I have to wonder if part of that is because one of them was written in 78, 79, and one is 2005. And if you think about what was happening in our culture in 2005...
This is British.
The world in 2005 needed a little bit of optimism.
Versus the 70s with Vietnam?
No. I'm not saying that was a happy time, but I'm saying that time period where the people were writing, this was the beginning of a whole new type of sci-fi, right? Wasn't this whole thing? And his background is Monty Python. Of course it was going to be a comedy, but it had to be dark because maybe Douglas Adams, maybe because of the time, we didn't want the super sugary happy. We wanted absurd. That was the form of escape. When they made this in 2005 for American audiences, I don't know if it's just the way I felt like it got marketed, but we had British people, but we also had a lot of Zooey Deschanel. Yeah. And she's there for the Americans, right? I feel like they made a choice in 2005 to make it a happy ending movie. For some reason, they've said, you know what? Maybe the point is that the world doesn't care about you, but we don't want that to be our point right now.
That so bothers me. Okay, the Magrathians basically destroyed the universe's economy. That was what they were doing. They were making luxury planets. You could buy these luxury planets. They destroyed the economy, and so they all went into a coma and waited for the economy to get back enough again, that they could come back and make more money and destroy the economy again. And then at the end, they're like, well, we made this planet, and, well, the mice don't want it. Do you want it? It's like they're going to fucking give away a planet. That, again, it's like it's completely missing the message.
Okay.
So one of the screenwriters for this took the original draft. He was not familiar with the source material and was brought in to kind of punch it up.
Carrie? That's his first name.
Oh, one of them.
There were two.
Okay, so Robbie Stamp, the executive producer, was one of them.
Oh, I was screenplay writers. Carrie Kirkpatrick, who also wrote Smallfoot, Over the Hedge, Chicken Run, James and the Giant Peach. This guy's got a background in kids' movies.
Yes, he does.
And, which isn't a bad thing, but this movie made the exception of the John Malkovich scary thing.
Because that was really creepy.
That was very creepy. And what happened to the whale? Other than that, my kid really liked this movie. My 6-year-old liked this movie. This movie that was made by a guy who writes kids' movies.
I was introduced to the radio show at the same age that your daughter watched the movie, and I liked it.
That's fine.
Okay.
I'm not saying that
it's for kids.
No. I'm not saying that she wouldn't like the radio show. I'm just saying this movie worked really well for an audience that didn't have a background of the book and who were maybe young at heart and like a happy ending.
Yeah, but then why not write your own book? Or not your own book, right? Okay, but if you're going to make a movie that you want to have that kind of movie, then make that movie. Don't make it based on something else and then destroy the meaning. So remember how you were about Die Hard, where it's like, I kind of like the movie, but they completely ruined the message from the book? That's how I felt about this. So yeah, the movie is a completely different animal. And then you have the book, and I really love the book. I was disappointed to see that they completely just missed the point.
I can understand that. The director of this movie...
This is beloved.
Garth Jennings, who had made primarily video shorts beforehand, which might explain the way that some of the transitions of the scenes happened, and then most recently made Sing, which is another kids' movie with a highly implausible happy ending.
Shocking. Shocking. He's a kids' movie person. And that's fine. You could do kids' movies. It was its own thing. Why would you just destroy this thing? So
probably the reason why Hollywood makes remakes all the time, right?
Okay,
built-in
but
audience,
like a simple favor,
money.
we had the exact opposite reaction. The book was crap, and we loved the movie because the book was crap. So if you take the book, it's not beloved, it's not this thing, it's not any good, and you make it better, fine, have at it. But this was so good on its own. And if you're not a fan, that's fine. It wasn't for you. But for those of us who did enjoy it, and there's a huge fan base, and they're a very loyal fan base.
Oh, yes, I know. I've been on Google recently. One of my Google searches recently was, am I the only person that didn't like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? Turns out I'm not, by the way. So hooray for the other 12 of you out there. So the point.
Slapstick humor. That was never part of the book. Having that embarrassment cringe humor. That was never part of the book.
Wait. Embarrassment cringe.
Okay, so when Arthur's at the party.
But slapstick, I feel like it was skirting a slap. I mean, how do you define slapstick? Let's make sure
when they're on the planet and they're getting hit in the face with those shovel things.
Like slapped by the sticks. Yes, exactly. Again, freaking, okay, I liked that because that is slapstick. They're literally getting slapped by sticks, which is absurd. Like, so I'm there for that.
If they had an in-universe reason, I would have been able to accept it more.
So if I told you that there was a cut scene that explained that made it all make sense, then that would be okay? Would that fundamentally change your perspective?
Perhaps.
Oh, okay. Well, hooray. I don't know if there is one or not. I'm just
there isn't.
But,
it looked like a joke that Douglas Adams had started with of, okay, this will be funny, and then he would create, like, a thing or a reason behind it. And then you would go, okay, cool. Because that's a big part of what it is, okay, here's this weird little bit of oddness. Well, here's kind of the story behind it.
I don't feel like everything in the book that was odd had a reason, though. I feel like there was a lot of just random oddness.
You could have random oddness, but you would have some reason for you. So, like, we have the story from Agrathea, and then Ford has that line, this is just a fairy story that parents tell their kids when they want them to become economists. Right. So that's a great line after you have that story. Most of a joke is setup. It's setup and presentation. Okay. And that's what the book did fantastically.
Set up jokes?
Yeah, it sets it up in a very intelligent way. There's a presentation involved. You have the story of Agrathea, then you have that joke. And the joke is funny because you have that whole great presentation for it. I was fine with Deep Throat watching a little silly cartoon because you have this premise, you have this massive, intelligent, just vastly intelligent computer that's watching a little dumb cartoon. So you have the presentation, you have this up. And so that was a joke that worked. There were a few jokes that worked. I know a lot of people didn't like the yarn. I was okay when they turned into yarn.
My 6-year-old loved the yarn.
Yeah, the yarn was cute.
My 6-year-old loved the couches.
I thought the couches were fine.
The couches were a lot easier to show that this is something crazy pants, as opposed to an ocean that stayed still in buildings that moved. Like, just from a production standpoint, the couches
I think works great in radio and works great in a book. But yeah, for visual, I was fine with the changes.
Plus, the couches looked like them. So that was pretty darn cute. That was a visual gag that I liked.
Yeah, so I won't say that everything was terrible. I actually kind of like the way they did the Vogons. I think CG is used way too much, and it's not nearly as good as most movie makers think it is.
Well, those were puppets.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. I actually like the Vogons, and that they had the nose above their eyes.
They were weird. But cool.
the animatronics were done really well for the most part. So yeah, there are things I liked. There were some of the jokes, like when Arthur and Ford are about to get jettisoned out, and they're looking at one door, and then they fall through the bottom.
Yes, that was a good joke. Hey, speaking of Arthur and Ford, did you get a vibe, or am I just like wanting to find queerness everywhere?
You were wanting to find queerness everywhere.
Okay, you didn't get a vibe. Not in the book. In the book, there was no romance, but in the movie, I had like this. Ford. Like, I have to. Why did you save Arthur? And then there's like this hug, and then there's like right before they die, and then there's like. And then,
I swear to God, you're a fan fiction writer wanting to come out.
No,
you are.
I don't.
You so are.
Okay, different tangent, but anti-fan fiction over here.
I know, but this is so fan fiction. This is
this is just me and my slasherifics.
You're creating fandoms and slashes, and yes, you're such a fangirl. Okay, so another thing I like the point of view gun. I thought that was a cool thing, and that totally had Adam's fingerprints all over it. It's a little sexist, but I did like, Zooey Deschanel's line of, it's not going to work on me, I'm already a woman. I was like, yeah, okay, go girls. But that was something that would be very much in universe. That's something that is like, okay, it's new, but it makes sense. Whereas John Malkovich's character was just fucking creepy.
Yeah, we can definitely agree on that. That whole part was weird. And now, I mean, I actually liked that they fleshed out because I feel like, here's the thing. In the book, we had this whole talk about when the pan-dimensional beings make the computer and the computer's going to give them the answer, the philosophers get all bent out of shape about it.
Yes.
They're like, don't you dare! Because basically that takes away their jobs.
Fundle and magic thighs.
Right, but it takes away their whole point of being. So, like, religious and philosophy can only exist if they're needed, right? If you have a society that doesn't need them or already has all the answers, then those people don't have jobs. I liked that. That was funny. That was pointing out something in society. They took that out in the movie. So instead, what they had, so that we would still have some kind of poking fun at religion, we had the nose people, handkerchief people and a frickin' church service where everyone says bless you, and they've got like little cowls with their little nose things. Like, okay, it's a weird divergent, but I feel like that was there because they took out the philosophy religious things, and I feel like they took out the philosophy religious things because that is a little too close to home for people. But like...
Oh, they totally took out the Babelfish God thing in the theatrical release. It's in the DVD, but not in the theatrical release. Because yes, there are people who would just go, how dare you prove my God doesn't exist?
Right, exactly. So, but by making it silly, look at this with their handkerchief and their noses and whatever, like, that's obviously just, quote unquote, that's just absurd, so that's safer. It's safer to be that absurd as opposed to, like, being a little too close to home. Whatever. I liked the philosophy, religious people getting bent out of shape about this computer, and then the compromise being, well, it's going to take a long time, so you're going to have still plenty of things to do.
Yeah, you have 7 million years to capitalize on this.
Right.
And that's fantastic. Philosophers threatening to go on strike. It's a great joke.
Philosophers on strike.
Yeah.
No one
and then,
notice.
They're really there just for the capitalism, and we or may not are to exist. Yeah, so that I'm mostly cool with. I don't like that, for a wider audience, they take away some of the sharpness, because, again, that was kind of the point, is making fun of things, and sometimes you have to be kind of sharp.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the casting choices that they made back in 2001 is Jim Carrey was supposed to be Zaphod Beeblebrox. And that felt very much like they wrote him for Zaphod Beeblebrox, and Sam Rockwell is not him, and Zaphod comes off very weird.
Zaphod is very weird.
No, but he's different. It's a character assassination almost.
Really? Because I felt like Sam Rockwell nailed it. This character was annoying as fuck, and I did not want to hang out with him at all. I felt the same way about the character in the book.
Okay, is Zaphod intelligent or not?
No.
See, and that's one of the things. This is subtle writing, and it's intelligent writing. The thing with Zaphod is he does play himself as stupid, but he isn't actually stupid. He has this whole subplot
You
where
said intelligent. That's different.
Oh, he's clever, or kind of if you want.
I would have said yes if you said if he's clever. Yes.
All right, so he's clever. That does not come off in the movie at all.
I think
he's just like a bumbling fool who's just jumping around and doing weird kicks.
But I think part of that is because they changed the thing with his brain and the two heads.
Yeah, that whole subplot is out. And again,
that was very strange because I
didn't like the two head thing that they did in the film because in the book,
it made it look like two personalities.
Yeah,
although that was really hard to follow in the book because then it would just they only talked about the second head occasionally. Like it would have whatever. I'm not going to poop on your.
Okay, but like this is kind of the point. He's an alien. He has 2 heads and 3 arms. That almost never shows up, and so you're taking what is a quintessential. This is our alien character, and you're making him just a regular human because you almost never see the third arm. You have the technology. You could have done this. They did this in a crappy 80s TV low-budget series. You could have the 2 heads. They could have done it. They could have had the heads look at each other.
And
there have been a lot of great sight gags just with that, if you want to have those kind of sight gags. And instead we get this weird Jim Carrey character, and it's not Zaphod. It misses a lot of the fundamental things that were Zaphod. He was kind of devious. He actually did his own brain surgery, I suppose, and he left his initials in his brain.
So that he would know that something had changed, something had happened.
Yeah, and there's this whole subplot about who really is the master behind the universe. Mm-hmm. And this comes out in later books. But Zaphod, he was chosen because he is outlandish. He is this weird extrovert who gets everybody's attention, and that distracts everyone from the real power.
Which was in both places, in the book and the movie, they made that point, that the job of the president was to be the buffoon that is distracting from the real power.
Yeah. And that's what makes Zaphod interesting, is because he does play the buffoon, but he's playing a buffoon. And so he's kind of half a buffoon, but he is also playing that because he has the subplot that he's following. Mm-hmm. So they take that out, and he's just an idiot.
Yeah, no, I get that, but I didn't think it was an actor's problem.
Okay, so Trillian. I have no problem with Zooey Deschanel, but Trillian was so different. So first off, you and I are kind of the same. We didn't really like the romance.
Yeah.
And
because I felt like this basically the movie was like, love is the answer. Yeah. Let's solve everything by love. And I like love, y'all. I'm good with love. But
it's overdone.
Love is overdone.
It is.
Jennifer says love is overdone.
Love is overdone.
No. No. Love is not overdone. Love as the last minute catch-all ghost in the machine. I'm just going to solve everything by saying that everything is now solved because love. Love is lazy writing.
And love is overdone.
Love is in movies, sure.
But, okay, I'll say this. Romantic love is overdone.
There we go. Fist bump. Solidarity.
All right. But Trillian, the whole point of her character is that, she's an astrophysicist, she's a mathematician, and then she's on the dole because there's no practical job. That's a joke. And so she goes off into the universe, and she's this intelligent person. And there's some hint later on that she might actually be half human because she doesn't care at all that the Earth is destroyed. She is completely disinterested. So one thing I kind of like about the movie is they did make her role a little bit bigger because she doesn't really have much of a personality otherwise. But I don't like that they did it by making it a romance. And so she's not her own person pursuing her own agenda, which was very much in the book. She's now the love interest, and therefore that's what she's reflecting.
Yeah,
she's there to be her love interest.
She was yes, agree to all of that, including her bouncing around in undies and being the manic pixie dream girl, floozy at a party. Like, what the hell, man? This movie does not paint women in a very good light because she's at this party. She connects with Arthur. There's she gets his costume in the movie. Like, they have this very cute little meet cute thing, but then because he doesn't want to drop everything and go to Madagascar with a girl he just met at a party, suddenly he's the bad guy. He's that is played as if he's the one who's doing something
that's not
wrong.
Her personality.
Well, regardless. Really? And so then she goes, so then Zaphoid shows up. Oh, I've got a spaceship. Zaphoid, sorry. And she goes off with him. Sam Rockwell shows up and she goes off with him and she's, whatever. And then she finds out oh my God, this is like an epiphany. This guy who hit on me while I was talking to somebody else isn't maybe a great guy? Oh my God. It takes him destroying my planet without realizing it.
Which is not actually what happens.
That's going to be the moment where I'm like, no, this is too far. what? And then it's not even like I also love Arthur and now I'm remembering that I love Arthur or I'm acknowledging. No, it's like, well, Arthur loves me and he's not an asshat like Sam Rockwell. So I guess I'll be with him now.
And she was never in love with Zaphod. She was her own person. She was hanging out with him because it was fun. She was never really that into him. And so there was never that huge, oh my god, he's a bad guy. No, she knew he was a shallow asshole. And she just was like, yeah, whatever. It's fun to be on a spaceship, and yeah, whatever. I don't care that much. So,
I really disliked all of that.
So the one thing I liked is she got a bigger role and she had a little bit more personality, but then I hated what they did with her personality.
Right, exactly. It doesn't count as a benefit if when they give you more to do, the things they give you to do are crappy, sexist, shitty things. Like, I almost would have rather them kept her as a one-dimensional background character, because then we could have said, oh, she has so much potential, instead of, look what they did to her.
So that's Trisha. Ford, I don't mind being played by Mos Def. I thought that was kind of interesting. And I didn't hate him, but I didn't think he had the right direction.
He was fine.
Because Ford is very lackadaisical, but he's also interested in having fun. And
I got that.
So to me, that was just more of a lack of direction, not a problem with the actor. Fine with Martin Freeman as Arthur. I didn't have many other casting issues, but Trillian and Zaphod were ones where I just went, that doesn't fit.
But I feel like you also really didn't like what they did with the character. So the casting may or may not have been a part of that. It's more the character changes.
True enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Deschanel, and I like Sam Rockwell and other stuff. I just felt like his direction and the writing of the character, again, they kind of missed the point.
Sure. What about Marvin?
All right, so Marvin, again, Alan Rickman.
Yep.
It was awesome. And I will say this, that I loved about the movie, is that the voice actors were all really good.
Yeah.
They were all really good voice actors. They did an excellent job. The thing I had about Marvin is that the irony of Marvin is that he is a depressed robot, but he's not supposed to look depressed. He kind of looks depressed in the movie.
He definitely looks depressed.
Yeah, he's just kind of this frumpy little bumble.
I don't remember how they describe him.
They don't really describe him. He's just kind of an android. It feels like it misses the point of you have this android who's got this great brain, and there's another message of how kind of technology is all sort of rubbish and shit, and the things that are supposed to make your life better don't in a lot of ways. So when Trillian is taking Arthur around the Heart of Gold, and she's like, look, here's a lightsaber that cuts bread, and isn't this awesome? And, we'll do this little mental thing and give you exactly what you want to eat. And yet, the whole point of that in the book is that technology is kind of rubbish. You have these things that are supposed to make your life better, and they kind of make them worse. It's like you get that really cool coffee maker, and it turns out to be something that you don't have any way of understanding how to make a cup of coffee.
Or it's bad for the environment. I'm looking at you, Keurig.
It's stuff like that. It's the technologies that's supposed to make your life better, and it doesn't. And that was the thing with the Heart of Gold. The doors sigh happily, and so you're annoyed with them. It can't make a cup of tea. It's supposed to be this amazing thing, and yet it just fails. And the door sign didn't work for me.
Hold on. Wait.
I want a monologue. The door sign sounded like, it didn't sound like signs of happy contentment. It sounded like somebody who just figured out the joke. It was like, oh, that doesn't sound happy.
I thought it sounded like somebody who had just relieved themselves in an exceptional sort of way.
Fine, that works for me. But they did not sound like really, this is the joy.
Yeah, that's not happiness that I feel then. Usually it's more relief. Yes, those doors sounded relieved. Okay, but back to the book. I will admit that I only read it the one time recently and one time long time ago. So, and it wasn't, maybe I should have read it as a closer read, but I totally missed that thing about technology. These things that are supposed to make your life better actually make it worse. My takeaway from the books dealing with technology was the absurdity of technology itself. It felt like it was a juxtaposition between like the Babelfish, which was not technology, it was organic, versus all of their newfangled things that didn't really work the way that they wanted them to do. To me, and again, not a close read, it felt more like a talk about nature versus technology. If you want to say that there were bad guys, they were the technology-driven Magathians who were building planets and kind of set, okay, I know you've got stuff to say. I got a different kind of lesson about technology and stuff than you did.
Okay, so one of the things I have with the John Malkovich character is there are no actual evil characters, at least in Hitchhiker's Guide. You have the Vogons who are the villains, but they're not actually evil. And
right, and they drop away in the book. They're really only there at the beginning. They're the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
I will say that the addition of them later, whatever, but the addition of Arthur queuing because he's British and going and saving her with paperwork, I found funny.
Okay, that was cute.
And it felt very Addams, and it felt very on par with the universe, and all of that.
He saves her with the expert paper filling.
And I love that. Okay, it's a little tiny thing, but when he's filling out the forms, the table that they have for him is high, so he has to put his arms way up.
And the pens are huge.
And it's like, at that is satire about pointing fun at how bureaucracy is sometimes just there to make your life more difficult. So there's nothing wrong. There's nothing inherently wrong with being organized.
There's nothing inherently wrong, but the way humans use it is a tool of power.
So the tool is not at fault, it's the way the tool is being used.
Fine.
Yes. Okay, so we agree. So, anyways,
I disagree with how it's used. You have a very positive use of it, and I don't.
No. I have a positive view of how it was intended to be used, or the tool itself can be used. I understand that it is not always used well. In fact, a lot of times it's used poorly, which is the point I felt, one of the points of this movie/book situation, was that they're using the tool of bureaucracy in a shitty way to hurt people or to keep them down or whatever.
Which is how humans use it, which is why it's a great comment on humanity.
Which is fine. Okay. I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying I got that from bureaucracy. I didn't get that from technology the way you did.
Yeah, but that's the heart of gold. And so that's why I was... the one scene in the movie that really made this point is when they're in the escape pod and the little handle is like too small to use and it's at an awkward angle and they don't know how anything works. That was the only one where you kind of go, yeah, that's technology being really, really stupid.
See, I felt like a lot of the technology being stupid was just part of that absurd, the universe is crazy pants and nothing makes sense.
But that's my point. There's a purpose behind it. There's a meaning behind it, and that's why the movie misses out. If you have this cool little lightsaber toast thing that she's waving in his face, which seemed really dangerous. I mean, that's really dangerous. Toast. Why are you waving it in that person's face? Damn it, Trillian.
Plus, also, from a logistical standpoint, if you cut a piece of bread and you have now toasted both sides, so the piece that you are taking away with you, the piece that is now removed from the loaf.
Which side do you butter?
Well, it's got toast on both sides, just like any other piece of toast that comes out of a toaster. It's toasted on both sides.
Yeah, but usually
no, the next piece, the part that's now what you have is a loaf with a toasted end, which means when you cut that slice, you have a cold toast slice and a hot warm slice on the other side, and that is just anarchy.
This is shitty technology, and they just didn't make that point in the movie. If they made that point, it's like, okay, that's cool. Okay. But they didn't.
They didn't. I guess to circle way back here is I didn't get that point from the book either. So I didn't miss it in the movie. I thought that the point about bureaucracy was in the book, but not as well developed as the point about bureaucracy was developed in the movie. So there you go. What's shittier, technology or bureaucracy?
And I like technology. I'm just saying that he points it out in a very funny way.
Technology is amazing. I am really glad that we live in the future.
I love technology. I'm just saying it's funny all the times it fails us.
Oh, for sure. I'm just wondering if maybe they were like, we don't really want to say how technology's bad, even in a funny way, because, like maybe we want some product placement by Apple or, you know what I mean? But everybody hates bureaucracy. That's easy. And maybe that's just lazy writing. Like it's easy to say bureaucracy sucks and standing in lines is awful. Like that's universal, right? But
I don't like neutering a message for commercialism.
No, I'm with you. I'm just wondering about the motivation. So the lessons that I kind of took away from this was that there's a difference between improbable versus impossible.
Yes.
And that's kind of an uplifting, optimistic thought. So I liked that. I did get the idea that we're not as important as we think we are, which is similar to what you were saying about the universe doesn't care about you and shitty things will just happen.
This is one of the things I actually liked that is kind of one of those messages that you have to suss out is that whole idea of point of view. You have the Earth that's destroyed because, bypass. And I find it very chilling that in the movie it was silent. In the book, there's this big silence and there's this big noise, and so we go out in a bang. But in the movie, it's that much more chilling when it's quiet because nobody cares. You die in a whisper. All these, 7 billion people, they're just gone.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to point of view, the Earth is considered nothing. It's destroyed. And then they find out it's the most valuable thing in the entire universe because it was the answer to life, the universe, and everything, and everybody's put all this money into it. So that, to me, was kind of hysterical.
No, but I liked the idea because we are very carbon chauvinist, human, whatever, like, we're the dominant species. And both the book and the movie made it clear, like, no, humans are not the dominant species. So take yourself, check your ego.
I love that the dolphins and the humans, so humans, we think we're so sophisticated because we have war and we make, houses and do this stuff, and dolphins, they just
we have bureaucracy.
They only frolic in the ocean and have sex and fun, and they're the dolphins going, yeah, humans are stupid because they make wars and do all this stuff, and we frolic and have fun. I thought that was beautiful.
But they know how to sing a nice Broadway song when they need to. And then away they go into the universe. Yeah. Anyways, you're not as special as you think. Like everybody, I liked that. That's a little bit of a pessimistic idea, maybe, but it's or pragmatist, maybe. Let's see here. Questions are more important than the answer.
But the thing with the question is that it was poorly defined. It's like, what's what's the question of life, the universe, and everything? What's the answer to this? Well, you don't have a and this gets back into philosophy. And so Douglas Adams loves to make fun of philosophy, and he enjoys philosophy, but there's also sort of the joke with Vroomfundle and Magic Thighs, where like, we may exist or not, but we might not, but we may. And so that sophism is sort of, I guess, intellectual navel-gazing to a ridiculous degree. And if you look at the characters who kind of cope best with the world, they're the ones who don't do that. Like, Ford Prefect just kind of wants to tool around the universe and have fun.
He's a dolphin.
He's a dolphin in alien form?
Sure. I know. What I felt was that it was saying people decided that in order to be happy, they needed this answer. They couldn't even really define the question, because when they went and they first said, what's the answer? The computer's like, to what? And they're like, life, the universe, and everything. That's not a question. Those are 3 noun clauses. Right? I mean, there wasn't even a question mark. So I feel like this is pointing fun at people who want something without even knowing what it is they want. Now, that I definitely got the vibe that this was about, don't rely on some external thing to make you happy, especially if you can't define what it is that you think that you're missing. You're not missing anything.
That's an interesting take. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I hadn't thought of that, so it's an interesting take.
And then when they're like really, so then the computer's like, you know what? I'm just going to make you live for a long time, not knowing. And I kind of feel, this is again headcanon, I feel like the computer was going to teach them a little bit of a lesson, or maybe Douglas Adams as the author here, in saying, okay, I'll give you an answer at some point. It's like when my daughter says, can I do this? And I go, someday, or ask me again in an hour and hope she forgets, right? And then she doesn't, and then I actually have to come up with an answer. So like, go away and try to be happy for a little while, and you would not believe how many times she goes in the other room and gets distracted and then doesn't want to do the original thing because she found something else to occupy her time. Parenting for the win.
I will say I loved Helen Mirren as Deep Thought, the voice of Deep Thought.
That was a very good, the voice acting was great. Okay, so go away, do something else for a while. I kind of feel like the implication here is don't think about this. Like, do something else. But did they? No. They were like obsessed about it for millions of years. That's my point, is that they
get navel-gazy.
Right.
And it's to a ridiculous degree where you're not even living your life anymore.
Right. And so then they're giving this bullshit answer, just this random answer. I feel like the computer could have said anything. It could have said squirrels.
But you also have the idea that you're searching for truth, but really you just want capitalism and you're getting lost in the material.
Sure.
So there's that hypocrisy of it all.
The hypocrisy of it. So they're given like an answer. And this, I feel like, is the next level of that. When you define your happiness based on something external and you don't even know what it is that you're looking for, but you know you don't have it somehow. Somehow you know you don't have it. And then somebody gives something to you and they tell you, this is going to make your life better. This is the cure-all.
Deep Thought never says that.
No, I know. But they said, give us the answer. And Deep Thought was like, fine, I will give you an answer. Here is an answer. Here is the thing that you think will make your life better. And then, of course, they go, no, that's not what I wanted, because that's not as defined as I wanted. That's not as full as I wanted. That doesn't make me feel the way I wanted to feel. So now it's your fault, and you need to fix it, Deep Thought. Give us the actual question that we negated to ask in the first place. Like, do you know what I mean? What
I really like about Deep Thought is Deep Thought actually shows a lot of wisdom and compassion.
You're not going to like it.
Yeah. Deep Thought. Deep Thought. I said he, but I like the movie She. I like Deep Thought with the Helen Mirren voice. I think that's beautiful. So Deep Thought it has kind of that wisdom, and it kind of understands sort of, I don't want to say humanity, but sort of living creatures and how bizarre and unfulfilled and unhappy we are. But I find it interesting that the androids, the robots, they have personality even though they're this artificial construct, and then you look at the Earth, which is supposed to be organic, and it's really just a big, huge construct. So you have that inverted...
Again, I want to point out what I said earlier about nature versus technology, because I really got that nature versus technology juxtaposition in the book.
And that, like, you know, the babelfish, it's the organic thing that is the most amazing thing.
Right?
But that's what I was saying.
Way more exciting than any of the technology that they have.
Well, I don't know. The improbability drive's pretty damn cool. And having an electronic book is pretty damn cool.
How very prescient. It's a
so,
Kindle.
There's really cool stuff. But like the Hitchhiker's Guide, it has its flaws as good as it is.
That's the out of context quote that I'm planning on using later. Jennifer says that it has flaws. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, it does. And because it can't have everything, so it has succinctly described the Earth as, you know, mostly harmless.
And that's, again, you know, technology is like 95% there, but it's that 5% that drives you nuts.
Always. Always. Anyways, yes. So again, questions more important than the answers. Maybe the idea is that don't rely on external things to make you happy. Find happiness from within, as long as you're not going to just say love, because then I'm going to roll my eyes.
Okay, but I'm going to go back to something that we started off with, and we had a huge disagreement, and that was the restaurant at the universe joke.
Okay.
So if this is a standalone...
If the movie or book?
If the movie was a standalone, you can get away with that joke, but it really fucking misunderstands everything. And that's, I mean, you're like, okay, it's kind of a funny little take on this sort of, to me, it's a tired joke. I've heard that trope before. Oh, you're going the wrong, we had that in The Last Unicorn. Oh, you're going the wrong way. Ha ha ha. But the end of the universe is chronological, not geographic. And Douglas Adams was a smart, intelligent writer. And there was some actual science that went into this. And it misses the point.
Totally could see that being an Adams joke. Okay, let's get into the spaceship and go to a place. Oh, well, we went the wrong way, so we have to turn around when there's no turning around.
The Infinity Drive. The whole point of the Infinity Drive is that it takes you to every single point in the universe at the same time. He was smart enough to write that, and then he would go, that's the whole point of the Infinity Drive. And the Heart of Gold is that you go everywhere in the universe. You don't have to find... Yes, I am monologuing. You don't have to go to Magrathea. You put in the Infinity Drive, you turn into a penguin or a couch or a ball of yarn or whatever you are, and then you're there, because it's in every single point in the universe. You don't have an end of the universe with the Infinity Drive. It completely misunderstands the technology there. It completely misunderstands how intelligent Douglas Adams was in creating this universe.
It's almost like it's absurd for the sake of being
But it's
absurd.
not. It's not. It's just stupid, and it misunderstands everything. And then if you were going to create a second movie, oh, it's chronological, you're at the end of the universe. What the fuck is that? No, it's supposed to be at the end of the universe time-wise, and this is why it... No, this is bad. That alone. You have the missing dialogue in the beginning with Ford and Arthur, which is so iconic, and it does set up the universe, and the absurd logic of, well, you're just going to lie in here in place of Arthur, and then we're going to nip off to the pub, and you don't have Ford bringing, big things of beer, because they could just go back inside and drink the beer. It makes no sense. You have these things that make no sense in the movie when they make these changes. You lose so much of what made the book funny, and you may not get British humor, but I do, and it was funny, and they messed it up. Okay, you can talk now.
Okay. It was a gag.
It was a stupid gag.
No.
Yes.
It was a gag about going the wrong way, which you cannot go the wrong way in space. Therefore, it is funny to pretend that you can go the wrong way when there's no way to actually go the wrong way. That is a joke that you don't have to find funny, but it's not the end of the... but it is the end of the world.
So
See,
the entire
my joke
time they're using the improbability drive, do they not know how it works?
That's definitely the impression that I got.
They kind of do, especially Trillian, because Trillian is a smart person.
Yeah, but not in the movie.
Unfortunately, no. And that's, again, the character assassination.
Sure. Sam Rockwell did not seem to know how...
Again, character assassination. When you insult your intelligent characters and you make them stupid, what do you expect? You had intelligent or clever characters, and if you want to say Sam Rockwell was clever instead of intelligent, Trisha was definitely intelligent. Were smart in their own way. They wouldn't make that mistake. They understand the technology
But
behind
I feel
this.
like, I mean, the fact that they put a coordinates into the ship, or they're trying to get somewhere in their ship, and their magical, improbable spaceship takes them other places, isn't an actual problem.
No, it's not a problem that they have the improbability drive. It's a problem that they understand how it's used. That's the whole point of them moving
But you
around.
can understand how something's used, and you still have a built-in probability that it won't work the way it's supposed to work, and will instead send you somewhere else.
But that's how they find microtheta. They actually do this. They do this multiple times. They make it work in this way.
Yeah, but they accidentally
It's like
also get sent somewhere else.
It's like they suddenly forget how to drive.
I feel like it's more like, you know, when you put your car in, okay, I don't drive, but if you put your car into reverse and then something happens in your engine and it like misfires and you hit the gas and instead of going backwards, you go forwards, you're like, oh, well, that was highly unlikely that little tiny spark or the squirrel sleeping in my engine block would have this effect, but it technically happened. That doesn't mean I don't know how to drive.
Okay, but that's a failure of technology. That means the improbability drive isn't working. But they know how it works, and that is how it works.
But
you're saying it doesn't work like it's supposed to work, and it works in this completely different way.
No, I'm saying it's working exactly how it's supposed to work.
No,
it's an improbability drive. Sometimes it does improbable things.
Like turn people into penguins and couches and yarn. Fine, but that's what it's supposed to do. And it's canon that that's what it's supposed to do. That's how it works in universe. You can't just suddenly have something that doesn't work the way it's been working the entire time just because you feel like making a gag. It's a bad joke.
I don't agree. I think it's in keeping with everything else.
But then you also don't understand the book.
Okay, seriously. I understand the book. Just because I didn't find it as funny as you did does not mean I don't understand it.
Apparently you do.
I do what? Understand it?
Well, if you're going to say that this joke is acceptable because, it's geography and not chronology, I'm going to say that you are not that impressed with the message to begin with. It isn't a thing for you.
This has nothing to do with messages. This has to do with a gag. I like the slapstick of sticks slapping people, right?
Okay, but why do you have a lemon juicer on his head?
That was... sure, whatever. Just as much absurd as anything else in this... Okay, seriously, my notes in this movie were like, note, chronological, note what's happening to... And eventually I just wrote WTF, man. Because, like, whatever. We're in an absurdist universe. Now, I understand that in the book, according to your reading of it, everything made a certain logical sense and was explained. And in the movie, that is not the case. Fine. Two separate things. In the movie, it's an absurd world. There are some rules, but they're not always internally consistent. And there are some rules that are always internally consistent.
Okay, so what's not internally consistent? Give me an example.
I don't know. I watched it once. I'm just saying. The thing is that it's... Okay, the freaking improbability drive sometimes takes them where they want to go and sometimes doesn't.
But that was a change in the movie. That was not a change in the book.
That is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the movie. In the movie, this universe does not seem like it makes all the logic. It feels like a place where almost anything can and might happen. In which case, a crazy-ass sight gag about the spaceship going the wrong direction is fine. It's not a hill worth dying on.
That was the thing that made him go to another point in the solar system, is that they had the wrong improbability drive. So the improbability drive still works the same way. That was how John Malkovich got them to go to his planet. And he held up, this is the improbability drive you wanted that would actually take you where you want to go.
So now there's multiple improbability drives?
Yes.
So he stole, like, when they were building it, he stole one.
Didn't you notice that he was hit, like...
Yeah, but I mean, like...
But that's why it didn't work, so it still is...
It just felt like yet another random absurd thing. The guy suddenly didn't have legs, but he had legs before.
And that's kind of my point, is that the movie fails in a lot of ways with its plot when they make these sort of changes.
Okay, but I don't consider that a failure as much of...
But there is a change in the plot that would make the improbability drive.
I say they're two separate things. The book seems to have a little bit more of a logical a relationship with logic, at least to understand what logic is. And the movie is just crazy pants absurdist, and in the world of crazy pants absurdist things, having yet another thing that doesn't actually make a lot of sense, it's fine, because it's in a world of crazy pants absurdist things.
And then we get back to, if you want to make that film, fine, just don't base it off of this. You can have your crazy pants absurdist sci-fi comedy, and that's awesome. Just don't do it with this.
Sure.
All right. So, was it worth your time, Kalia?
Was it worth my time? Here's the thing, and I people are going to hate me, but I feel like the jokes from the book are so in culture that you don't have to read the book to get the jokes, some of the jokes, to know what it's referencing, or to find, that it hangs in the air like bricks don't, right? That's funny. It's funny whether you read it or didn't read it, okay? I never quite got the hang of Thursday. Whatever, there's all of these quotes, and people quote them all the goddamn time. And that is fine. So if you really want to know, what was the sentence before that joke about bricks, read the book. If you don't care because you're like, I kind of feel like I understand the joke about bricks, then you don't necessarily need to read the book. Okay. But if you really like British humor and you have not read this book and you want to see what the fuss is about, then by all means, read this book. That's my feeling on the book. I know that you're going to say everybody should read this book because it's an amazing book and you love this book, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. That's cool. So,
but if you don't like it, that's cool too. You're allowed not to like it.
Yay! And I will say, if British humor, if you don't find Monty Python funny, this is probably not the book for you.
True.
Okay? I do not find Monty Python funny. So this was probably not the book for me. Okay, fair. As for the movie, I feel like if you are a fan of the book, this movie might have problems for you. It might not. Again, I know people who liked both. They liked them for different reasons. They have different expectations, whatever. So fine. But be aware, if the book is precious to you, that the movie is probably going to bother you the way any adaptation of something that is precious to you will, whether or not the movie on its own is good. And I will say, if reading the book does not sound like fun, the movie is shorter, it's super freaking absurd, there are dolphins that sing, and my 6-year-old kind of liked the movie. So, there you go.
My perspective here, I liked the radio show. I liked the book. The TV series was okay, not great.
I can't talk about any of those because that wasn't what we're doing
I'm just letting
here.
you know my perspective this time. You had your chance, now it's my turn. So, yeah, the book feels like a fleshed out version of the radio show. And I don't think that if you like the book, you won't necessarily hate the movie. You might like the movie, you might not. I do know people, including your husband, who liked the movie and they were fine with it. Some of our mutual friends love the movie, and that's cool. I had issues with the film. So for me, the film was meh. I didn't absolutely hate the film. I thought there were some good things that they did. I liked some of the changes they made. There was a lot of stuff where it just felt like they lost the heart of what made the series, not just the book, but the radio show, really fun and interesting. So that's my 2 cents.
There you go.
All right. So book, fuck yes for me. Movie, meh. Book, meh for you. Movie was, yeah.
Yeah. I think my actual word on my screen is
I would absolutely agree. If you don't like Monty Python, this is not the book for you.
Yeah. Save your hate mail. It's never going to change.
And the book is short. The book is like 200 pages.
Yeah, it's 170
okay.
in my edition.
All right, yeah. So,
yeah,
I have the complete and unabridged.
I have whatever he had on the shelf. So.
Yeah, I just got the most epic eye roll.
Pages and Popcorn Podcast was brought to you today by British Wit, Coffee. Oh, we should have been drinking tea. I mean, not really, because tea kind of sucks. But
tea? Oh my god!
I'm sorry. That doesn't really. I just really wanted to watch her face.
Tea does not suck.
I have
no idea.
You know what? I literally practiced for this today because I was knowing how you feel. Because I don't know if you guys have caught this, but she's not super subtle. Knowing how Jennifer feels about the book and the movie, I was totally going to pretend to come in here and be like, the book was trash. The book was awful, but the movie changed my life. It was, I watched it 4 times. I think it's the best. I'm gonna quote it. Can we play a clip? But I couldn't do that because I wanted her to continue to make this podcast with me.
I'm glad we can argue and fight and still be, I guess, co-podcasters.
That's right. Well, I guess if we agreed on everything, it wouldn't be fun.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we have our disagreements.
It'd be an echo chamber, and yeah, so...
And I respect your views, even if I don't agree with them.
Oh, that's very nice of you.
Too bad it's not reciprocated.
I was going to say... No, I'm just kidding. Yes, I also respect your views. Even though, I mean, yeah, I really just do feel like because the first book we talked about was The Mist. And I know I'm sounding like just a grumpy ass person, but I was like, I don't like horror books, but sure, I'm going to read this one. And then, wow, there's elements of this horror book that I didn't like because they are horror things that I don't like, whatever. So this was the same thing. I'm not a huge fan of this type of British humor. I found things in it that I liked. I found a couple messages. Like, I wouldn't say that I am bitter about spending my time on it, or anything like that.
I think you also got really saturated in a weird way.
Yeah, and again, like that, it really has to do with...
I was
right.
First time I never
this
heard
baggage that we bring to stuff can really, really cloud. Like, freaking, I knew all about pan-galactic gargle blasters and Slarty Ballfast and Don't Panic and, like, all of this stuff. And it was a weird group. Like, if you didn't know what that was, like, you were made fun of. And so, like, when I had to actually ask what a pan-galactic gargle blaster was at one point, like, I got mocked, So I don't have... And then again, I read all the books together. So it was really hard to separate. What I remembered before we read this together was the beginning with the bypass and this house getting, going to be knocked down, and then they get onto the Vogon ship and the bad poetry. And then I was like, I think at some point there's a cow that talks to them before they eat it.
Yes, that's Restaurant at the End of the Universe.
Right. That was like my entire... I just glossed because it wasn't memorable. I just remember the quotes because that's apparently what we're supposed to be remembering.
So if you were, I guess, fresh to it and you didn't have people making fun of you, and I'm sorry they did that because that's mean, and, nerds can sometimes be cruel.
Gatekeeper nerds.
Yeah, I do not like gatekeeping.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm more the person of, you haven't found this out? Oh, this is wonderful. Come and join me with this and go on a journey, rather than, you don't know about it? Ha ha, you suck. Yeah. That's just the wrong attitude to take.
It really is, especially if you want people to like your thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so come on the journey with me. Don't shame and gatekeep.
So, whatever.
And you do like Star Trek, and you like your sci-fi. It's just this is not.
Yes,
your
okay. So
you're wearing the
I am literally wearing a Star Trek hoodie right now. Yeah, no.
She's a red shirt, so I get to kill.
And this is Picard's. I'm just okay. Next generation over here. Yeah, at one point when I said I wasn't really enjoying the book, Jennifer said, "Oh, you don't like sci-fi?" And I said, "No, I like sci-fi.
No, I really like sci-fi.
I don't like." This it's the comedy part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And have you ever watched a movie that was sucky, but then, like, you can't stop quoting it?
Yeah.
I feel like this book is that for me. Like, the book, it wasn't sucky, but it wasn't highly enjoyable, but there are definitely lines in it that are really memorable. Mm-hmm. And they're fun to just drop into conversation, especially if you're hanging out with nerds who, then you got some nerd cred, because you're like, yes, I also read that book. Pages and Popcorn Podcast was brought to you today by British Wit, Coffee Not Tea, Cough Drops for Jennifer again. Someday she'll be finished.
Someday I will stop coughing.
Someday. Anyways, thank you so much for listening. Let us know if you felt that the book or the movie was worth your time. Just save your hate mail, because I'm not going to read it.
Au revoir.